I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am talking with Juliet E. Gordon, aka Luxury Skin. And I guess Luxury Skin essentially is Juliet, but with collaborators, so I am now going to refer to them like they are a collective. So they have just released their latest single, Die Waiting. And this follows up another single, Bleed For Me, which was released a few months ago. And that follows on from their debut album, It's All Over, which came out at the end of 2023, with a follow-up record in the making. And this is an interview that has a little bit of a backstory. So a few years ago, I got the opportunity to interview Michael Girard of Swans for New Noise magazine. And I don't remember exactly how this came together, but I think that I searched online and I managed to figure out that Howard Wolfing was the representative, or at least he was doing some PR work for Swans. So through contact with him, I managed to get this interview. And then Howard went on to be a publicist who's been very supportive of the podcast and got me various different interviewees, one of whom was Maura Pond of Luna Honey. And that interview, somehow or other, although I don't remember exactly how, got me linked up with Juliet because one or other of us followed each other after that interview. Maybe she liked the video and I saw her on Instagram and thought, oh, this looks really interesting. And so I followed her band account. And then she was sort of in my peripheral vision. Juliet's got a Substack blog called Ask Luxury, which is very entertaining. And I'd had in my mind, some way down the line, I would like to do an interview with Juliet. But I figured, like, well, I guess I'll just wait until there's some new release coming out. And then I saw Bleed For Me was released, and I thought, maybe this is the opportunity. So I got in touch, and here we are. Juliet is a very entertaining and eloquent interviewee, much as her music is very elegant. And it's also dissonant at times, which is something that we talk about. And also, I suppose, difficult to categorize. Perhaps for a frame of reference, I guess, if you're familiar with St. Vincent, I think there are certain parallels there, kind of quirky pop-ish music, but it's too weird, the music of Luxury Skin, to really be, I mean, I guess in a sense, easily commercial pop music. But anyway, Juliet can far more eloquently describe the music herself as we discuss some of her musical history, her previous band, The Classical, various different in-depth discussions about different Luxury Skin music and other aspects of the music business, which I found all very illuminating. And I'm going to stop babbling on and I'm going to let you hear from Juliet herself. So I'm going to play Die Waiting at the end of this interview. I'm going to play a little clip in a moment. I'll put links in the description for following Luxury Skin, for checking out the music. It's All Over is tremendous. I love it. I've been listening to it a lot recently. And the various singles, I think all of Juliet's music is great. So I strongly recommend, if you don't already know it and you're not already familiar with Luxury Skin and indeed The Classical, go check it all out. It's all great stuff. And with all of that said, Luxury Skin, aka Juliet E. Gordon, take it away.
Little dream you're not allowed, you do without so patiently. If he were here, you'd bring him out and teach him about the major leagues. The children play and ain't it sweet? They tumble down.
So talking about Luxury Skin, I have this notion, because I've been listening to a lot of your music and I've been trying to think, if I were talking to someone who didn't know your music, how would I give them like a very simple kind of entry idea? And I'm not entirely satisfied with what I've come up with, but here's what I've come up with. So see how it lands for you. So my thinking is that the Juliet of Luxury Skin is like a torch singer from the 1940s who was teleported into Studio 54 in the 1970s.
I love that. I mean, I think that's great. I mean, what I've been giving people is the elevator pitch, and this might be misleading, but I say it's like late Scott Walker and Yeezus era Kanye West had a little girl.
I like that. And another thing as well that's pleased me is I've found myself thinking of different reference points with your music, and then I'll read one of the blurbs or I'll watch a video and I'll go, "Oh, I'm vindicated now." And the Scott Walker thing was something I'd thought. There are a couple of songs you have. I think it's partly with Luxury Skin, but also from the classical, where there was a something with the vocals that really reminded me of the Night Flights Walker Brothers album, which I love. That kind of like it's sort of soothing and seductive, but also very dark.
Yeah, totally. It's like James Bond themes, but like the B-sides, the ones that were too weird. That's another thing that I tell people sometimes, I'm like, because sometimes you're like, do you know Scott Walker? And people are like, the whoever in Wisconsin who's a dick, the congressman. And I'm like, that's sad that you don't have that reference point. But yeah, no, the Walker brothers totally are, the Walker or Scott Walker should have done a James Bond theme. I think Scott Walker did a song, Only Myself to Blame, that was used in the closing credits of one of the Pierce Brosnan Bond movies. And that's the closest they got. So it's tragic. It was a real loss that we didn't get a Scott Walker proper Bond theme.
Yeah. Well, to your point about the B-sides to Bond tracks, I did also find myself thinking from time to time of Barry Adamson, and I know that you've got a Nick Cave influence, but have you ever listened to Barry Adamson's solo work?
Oh, I haven't.
If you're
I gotta write
interested
all
in the
these things
idea
down.
of alternative Bond themes, you should definitely check out Barry Adamson.
Oh,
He's even
God.
got an interpretation of the Bond theme done in a reggae style.
Oh my God, I love. Are you kidding? Okay, I'm definitely. Oh, and he was on the Lost Highway, did the Lost Highway soundtrack, it
Mm,
looks like.
yeah.
So interesting. Okay. Consider him saved. Sorry to even be doing this during, but if I don't do it, then yeah, it's just God, the world is such a trove of riches, of musical riches. It just blows my mind more and more every day.
I know, and people keep making more music as well.
I know. And a lot of it is really good.
A lot of it
Luckily,
is really
much
good,
more of
yeah.
it is really bad. So,
Yeah, indeed. You wouldn't want too much of it to be good. That would be intimidating.
totally.
So I so originally having discovered you through Luxury Skin, as you noticed the other day, I also discovered your previous band, The Classical. And so I can imagine there's more of your music that I haven't heard, but I feel like I've heard everything at least that's online by The Classical, and I've heard everything that's online. And in fact, at the time of this interview, I've heard something that's not online from Luxury Skin. Thank you very much for that. And I really like the music of the classical, but somehow there's something about Luxury Skin that has a kind of emotional resonance that seems like an extra layer for me. So I'm wondering for you personally, in terms of your feelings going into making Luxury Skin and the music that you're making now, like how do you feel what you're doing now compares to the way you were expressing yourself artistically 10 years ago?
Well, I started the classical when I was finishing up college in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And at the time I was 21. I think I was thinking about it when I was 20. No, I was writing some of the music when I was 20. So I will say that it started about then. And at the time, the classical was mostly fueled by like a procrastination, rage, self-hatred cycle. So it was very emotional, and it came from a very dark period in my life when I hadn't yet sort of figured out how I needed to move through the world and what I needed. Yeah, so that I started in Colorado Springs, and then I moved with the drummer who I was together with at the time to the Bay Area, and then that's where the classical had most of its tenure, was in the Bay Area. And what can I say? It's my first forays into really recording and writing my own music. Prior to that, there isn't much. I mean, I was in a couple different bands, of different types when I was in, later high school years and then earlier college. But but mostly I was an actor. I was involved in theater, and I was convinced up until I was about 20 that I was going to be a professional actor, and then I became disillusioned with it rather quickly at one point. And you know, music had always kind of been like chattering in my ears, so I was like, okay, I'm doing music now. But yeah, so the classical, I mean, it was all sort of recorded and produced by me on my laptop on Logic, even a lot of it in GarageBand. And you know, that was the first record, Diptych. And then there is one album of the classical that even predates that one that I don't think is online any longer, that me and my friend Maxim, who's actually still now in Luxury Skin, made together. But anyway, you know, I think as far as like it was just earlier efforts, and I had it professionally mixed and mastered, but you know, I didn't have the tools at the time or the understanding or mostly the patience and maturity and work ethic and artistic practice to be doing anything other than kind of like working myself up into a frenzy through whatever I was, you know, upset with, or, you know, and then finally writing a song about it. And then once I had enough of those songs, recording them. Like now with Luxury Skin, I have a practice. I have regular writing hours when I'm writing, and I write, and then the stuff that's the best gets developed further, and goes through many iterations and a lot of different processes to try what works best. And that's how, you know, so it's funny, like with the classical being actually when I was far more emotionally volatile, you know, coming out sounding way more like you know, just indie pop or indie rock. But also that being, you know, a lot of my influences are exactly the same now as they were then. I just didn't quite know how to actualize them, and I hadn't done enough experimentation. So, yeah.
To be fair, I think if someone who was expecting just straight indie pop listened to the classical, they would go, "This is pretty dissonant."
Well, good, as they should.
Well, indeed. Because you know, one of the things I was thinking, because you do have a really beautiful voice, and I would say you've got really elegant guitar, not guitar, piano playing as well. And so from listening to your music, like the capacity to create something beautiful is there, and you deploy that often. But at the same time, you also seem to have a real delight in having dissonant melodies or dissonant harmonies. And I wondered to myself, maybe partly because of the New York connection, is there a sort of a no wave history that goes back for you, like Lydia Lunch and other such bands of that ilk?
I think I came to have any similarity through that through other pathways. You know, it's like you get to the center of the mountain from different directions. The only band that I am seriously into from that, and that I have been seriously into for a long time from the New York no wave scene, is Swans, who I actually just followed for a few dates in Eastern Europe. But yeah, I would say that, you know, my and I have way more to say about Swans if you want to go back to talking about
They're
them. I know
basically my
both
favorite
huge
band,
fans.
so we can talk about Swans as much as you want.
Basically the best band ever. So yeah, but I basically, I was, you know, like I said, was really into theater growing up. Opera was always played in my grandparents' houses and my house, you know, growing up. And I got into dissonant music from there, and you know, just the lushness and possibility of different harmonics. And then the other thing that introduced me to dissonance, and is probably the reason I'm making music today, is I remember very vividly hearing Work It by Missy Elliott on the radio for the first time when I was 9 or 10 years old. And our cousin was visiting us at the time, and, you know, he was really into ska, you know, because ska was cool then. And if you weren't into ska, you weren't cool. And if you liked rap on the radio, you were not cool. So, you know.
Well, I have
Who's
a
that hasn't aged very well, right? So
well, I have a soft spot for 1 Minute Man. So I mean, I think that's the same album, right?
no, different albums.
Okay.
Um,
Is Work It earlier?
Work It is on Under Construction, and 1 Minute Man is on
Missy,
the
So
Silver
Addictive.
album cover. Yes. Bingo, bango. Yeah. So Work It was it slightly later or slightly earlier? She had a, legendary run, obviously, changed music. But yeah, no, I mean, hearing Work It on the radio, and I love the entire Missy Elliott catalog. Work It especially was like, I mean, I remember I was like flushing in my chair, and my cousin was like, "Oh my God, this is a disaster." Disaster. Of course, he's not fair. At the time, he's like 14. Like, what does he know? He's a god to you, your older cousin or whatever. But yeah, I was hearing, and inside, I'm just like, oh my God. I was like, I have to know everything. I have to listen to this song again. I have to figure it out. And I became completely obsessed with Missy Elliott. And then, early 2000s and 90s, and ongoing hip hop production, I think it's so dissonant, because when you're incorporating a sample, there's all of these little timbres and these little secret notes in the background there that you can't get rid of. And so but they end up being part of this incredibly hypnotic, like sequence. The dissonance itself ends up being a rhythmic quality, because those beats of the dissonance are so they're doing something against like the big knocking beat of the drums. And so yeah, that and I think I don't know, maybe a bigger topic that I haven't ever really articulated out loud is like the sort of classical connection to hip hop, as in like classical music and hip hop being like, there's something there that I haven't really figured out how to articulate yet, that I'm sure someone else has in a way that's really good. But yeah, I mean, that I love New York No Wave as well, to go back to that. I do love it, but guitar music was not my end all be all when I was first getting into music. And since then, I've gotten into so much music, and I love guitar music and everything. But yeah, so that's kind of, those were my earliest dissonance influences.
Well, on that topic of guitar not being sort of your entry point in terms of falling in love with music, and I guess in terms of how you make music, for me, I'm very much sort of beholden to guitar when it comes to trying to write music. Like, it's always from a guitar. And I like to think that what I do is not like just typical major chord strumming. I don't even know what the things are, but usually it'll be like some sus2 or something, like some weird thing that has like some dissonance, I guess. But for your music, which a lot of the time seems to come from piano, what was sort of your influences in terms of giving you a framework for how you would actually create your own songs?
That's a good question. Well, growing up, I took piano lessons, and I was never great with practicing. So, despite now having been playing piano for 30 years, I'm like decent at piano. So piano was always my composing instrument. And I, as I said to you, having the various influences that I had, and feeling like, when I'd hear my finished work, I'd be like, all right, I've done something, but then, really like, I've still come up short. I haven't really done it, what I want to do. So I really feel like with this new music that I'm doing, I'm finally figuring out how to do what I want to do. And one of the things which I started doing on the last record, It's All Over, but didn't do that much, is sampling my own piano playing. So I'll go in and I'll mic up my piano into my MPC, which is a huge part of my composing. That's my most major composing tool right now, is the MPC, or like it's even with the piano. I'll play the piano until I come up with what feels like a really good, and usually quite, it's dissonant, but it's also very like lovely, because I like loveliness. I like melody lines, So I'll have something going on the piano, and then I'll record it into the MPC. And then I'll just chop it, and I'll chop it kind of at random. Sometimes I'll have some idea that, yeah, maybe sometimes I'll have some idea. I'll chop it here and here, and then, but, do the chops and then start playing with the chops. And then all of a sudden, you get a version of this like real loveliness, and this real sort of, which is kind of how hip hop was originally made, sampling a beautiful jazz record, or even a beautiful classical record, or a funk record, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, when you put it on the MPC, now it knocks. You know what I'm saying? So like, figuring out how the MPC goes into my workflow, that was a big part of sort of, my new compositional, that's the influence is the equipment, as much as, the music that I listen to and that I have listened to historically. And then the other thing is when we were touring, when we were getting ready to tour for It's All Over, I was having trouble getting all 4 other band members in the room of our 5-piece. And I realized, I got one too many people. And there was one person who was kind of too busy. So I was just like, dude, thank you. I love you, but it's not going to work. And so then I started playing bass when we played live. And it was more just like, yeah, someone's got to play bass. So I'll play bass, not for every song, but for a lot of the songs, for a number of the songs, I played bass. And learning just a little bit more bass was enough to also feel very inspiring in terms of, now I have all of the rhythmic bases for making my music that has some hip hop influence into it, which is to say MPC, sampling a piano and playing the bass. So, then everything kind of came together and I was like, this is amazing. And I still have much more to learn on the MPC, but, I'm fairly competent at this point and I just want to keep going with that. So that's the current thing.
Yeah, now that you mentioned the bass, I did look at a couple of clips on Instagram of Luxury Skin playing live, and I didn't remember it was the bass. You were holding a stringed instrument, but it makes sense that it would be the bass. And
Yeah.
do you know, on that topic, I don't remember if it was particularly this song that I watched, but I wanted to talk to you briefly about Vows, because again, reading one of your Ask Luxury blogs, you had some comment about someone saying that Vows was like tampon rock. And the thing is, well, I would say I've got my own comments about Vows. So and it goes back to Lydia Lunch actually. I'm not going to be able to attribute this correctly, but I think it was maybe in a Henry Rollins biography. She had apparently made some comment that there's sort of like a lineage of rock and roll music going from Elvis through Iggy Pop, which is like music that's through the pelvis. And so I don't know if she specifically mentioned Nick Cave, but when I listen to Vows, I think of I forget. I think it's one of the birthday party songs. There's a video of them performing it, I think, in Germany, and I've forgotten his name now. Tracy Pugh, the bass player, has got his leather trousers and he's got his cowboy hat on, and he's like grinding in the most filthy way in this song, and that's what that song makes me think of. So I'm like, it's music of the hips.
Music of the hips. It's never, the hips are not something you can attribute to me. Let's be real. I was not blessed with hips. But yeah, no, so I guess I had to compensate. Yeah, but no, I love Vows. And Vows was I wrote the words for Vows and then I went to the band that I was working with at the time to write those songs. And I was like, just give me like some blues. Just like, lay down some blues. And then I actually have a recording of that session of writing the song, so I could really go through and figure out how we got exactly to where we got. But yeah, then I just recited the poem. So that was probably the most like no wave, approach to writing a song that I've ever done. And what else was I going to say about it? Oh, the song is about the song. It's funny that I knew that the song maybe in the singing, it's like it wasn't a surprise to me that it provoked that response from some sort of like outside people, like people who weren't already, Luxury Skin fans or people who'd seen us live, because it is like it's a screaming woman. But, the song is about, yeah, a lot of people don't like that sort of thing. But also, to be fair, like my husband was figuring out, he was like, yeah, we should do some of these Instagram ads for you for your music. And I'm like, yeah, maybe we should get the music out there. And we don't know how to do it. Like now I have professionals doing that for me because that seems to be some of the only ways to promote your music. and this is so circuitous, but anyway, like they're targeting the right audiences, people who would actually like the music. And my husband does heroic works trying to help me with the sort of more computer and techie side of making this whole thing happen. But we weren't A/B testing to find the right people who would like this music. We've got like some guy from St. Louis with like beer goggles on who's like, fucking screaming women rock, get this shit off my fucking page. So that was what that guy commented. But the song is about someone having a panic attack, and me giving him a hand job, like sort of doming him out of it with a ham job. Hand job. And it it's very much like a devotional to the penis type song. So it's from the pelvis in so many different ways. And it's sort of cracking the code of what the men want after all. So if only they could spend a bit more time with the lyrics and not just see the women screaming up in the front, they might get something they want out of it, but it's not on me.
Okay, there's definitely a couple of things that I want to explore more out of that. So one of the things was, and this is sort of like, I guess in a way, a general comment about what appeals to me in terms of what I get out of luxury skin, is that, and this is also another one of these things where I was sort of thinking about this, and then I was reading the blurb for It's All Over, and there was a reference. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking of. There's this kind of dichotomy between seduction and, I mean, okay, maybe it's not quite a dichotomy, because you've got songs which are very poignant and somber, the more kind of sparse piano driven songs. But I feel like that there is this combination through a lot of your music of the sensual and the sexual with the menacing and the threat of violence and possible death. And I'm a real sucker for that combination. I love that sense of like, I'm being seduced, but I might die.
I mean, it's one of the greatest things about being alive, about being a human, maybe even being any type of animal. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a huge part of this. It's a huge part of what I do and what I cover. And I do think that it really goes both ways. Like, I certainly don't think that this is a project that like is a reaction to like the violence towards women, which is of course rampant. But this project isn't about that. This project is about the violence that goes every direction, sometimes both directions at once, even while both people are getting their rocks off and very much getting what they need. It's to me, it's very interesting, the manipulations that happen. I mean, a movie that there were several movies that I was thinking a lot about as I embarked on this latest album that's still that we've released a couple singles and we're finishing up. And one is Last Tango in Paris, because Marlon Brando is just my absolute favorite. No one has come close. There's not been an actor that has even come close to Marlon Brando. But that movie, especially like I think it's like Marlon Brando's second comeback or something. Maybe it's just his first comeback. He's like a little older and grizzled. It just opens with him like in the cold with no scarf on. And he's just like, you're like, oh shit, Marlon Brando got older. And then he proceeds to have this, this affair with this much younger woman that is based on like so many gaps in what they don't know about each other. But and they open the movie also, like the opening credits are these Francis Bacon paintings of distorted bodies in a bed in the center of the room, which kind of then ends up the entire movie is just the two of them like boning in this like empty top floor apartment with like nothing in it basically but a mattress. And there's a very controversial scene in the middle of that movie which I think was traumatizing for everybody in it. I won't try to give away too much, but that movie, everyone gets manipulated in that movie, and obviously cross that into the real world of making that movie too. And I find that all extremely interesting because I don't know what, I just find it all extremely interesting for reasons that I don't think I even have to justify.
No, I don't think you do at all. And I think that's Like a good illustration, because obviously I haven't heard all of the songs that you're working on for your forthcoming album. Do you have a title for it, by the way, that you can reveal?
I don't yet have a title. No, I'm working on album art right now, and I don't yet have a title. And I would be happy to send you some more, as long as I think you'll understand, because you're also a musician. You know what music in progress sounds like. Some of the songs we don't have final mixes on yet, or even final like compositions of yet, but they're underway enough that I would be happy to share more with you.
Oh,
I
I'd love
almost did,
to.
and then I was
Yeah.
like, maybe we'll talk first. But I'll
Yeah.
share more with you after this, and then you can think about,
Yeah,
stuff.
I'd love to hear work in progress. I had the opportunity for that with a musician I interviewed, David Judson Clemens, who was we did an interview a couple of years ago where he was working on his album, and I got to hear rough demos, and then I got to hear the album when it was finished and interview him again. And it was amazing for me because in terms of the arrangement, so much had changed that I wouldn't have anticipated. Like I really liked the original demos, but to get to hear the process between one form and the other was really fascinating for me. So yeah, that would be cool.
Oh yeah, oh, it's the best. I'll definitely send you stuff. Yeah.
But what I wanted to mention, so in terms of what I have heard, and so from It's All Over, I was thinking that matter of like the violence that can go in all directions. I think a great illustration of that is Don't You Recognize, where it's like this surreal recounting of a dream, or there are aspects of it that are a dream, and it's got the violence of the guy going into the woman's room with a shotgun and shooting on the pillow, and then you gets up and kicks him in the gut. And I really appreciated that response. It was like, I'm going to meet violence with violence.
Always. I'm an Aries. What can I say? Not that any of that is real. But yeah, yeah, no, violence with violence. I mean, I don't know it any other way. It's how things play out. And I mean, so that song is based off of two real dreams that my husband and I each had. It's All Over is all about meeting my husband and sort of the progress of our first year or two. But yeah, the dream he had was real. And I remember he came over to my house, and he had this look in his eyes like he didn't know me. He had, like, you could tell he was just like, I'm not, I have to wait. I have to wait until I can trust you again, because of something that had happened in his sleep. And he didn't, say anything mean or hold it against me. He certainly didn't shoot my pillow. That was the fictional part. He's not that kind of person, but I had to kind of tease it out of him.
That's a
And
powerful
then
dream. That's like, Reservoir Dogs. Like, you insult me in a dream, you better wake up and apologize.
fully. No, that's a crazy powerful dream. And I mean, there's so much to be said about that, like the power difference between you and your father and the money and all of these different things. I mean, there's so many different levels and layers to all of that. And then, I have the dream that's then also kind of about money also, where it's like in the dream he's married to an ex of his who is a successful, person in a very successful professional field, to which I cannot relate. And then I have to essentially like try to draw him away and seduce him away in a into a complete fiction of an existence where like someone actually runs away to Greece with a lover from their wife, and it's like that's a total fiction. But yeah, there's always, yeah, there's always the threat of violence, I suppose. I mean, never in my marriage. It's not like that, but I don't know. I always walk around and I'm like, where's the violence going to come at me next? But I don't know why, but that's what I'm braced for.
And thinking about the overall kind of atmosphere that you've got with Luxury Skin, and part of that comes from the visuals as well. Like I think the album cover for It's All Over is very striking, and it makes me think, I don't know whether this was intentional, but it kind of makes me think of Vogue era Madonna. There's sort of
Oh,
like
cool.
this sort of strong female character on the cover, and sort of like mildly sexualized male figures, which is sort of turning on its head this very common thing we have of like, just the bodies of women just everywhere, and that's kind of like what we're bombarded with. So it struck me that there's something kind of strong. I don't want to sound condescending as a man, but like kind of strong and emancipated from a woman's point of view of this project. Like that's the way it comes across to me. It's not submissive. It's kind of like, yeah, a strong female atmosphere and female voice, and I find that quite powerful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, and I again, I mean, I kind of chafe at the idea that this project would seem like strong women, in the way of like Lizzo or whatever, because like I just find that shit to be so contrived and flattened
Yeah.
and simplistic. And that's kind of the problem that I have with, you know, a lot of the dialogue or the sort of the attitude around feminist work today is that it's and art and music is that it is kind of like it's reverse engineered from the perspective of like you don't need a man. And my perspective is very much like, oh, we need each other and we torture each other. And I suppose that maybe by default then you could be like, well, I mean, to me, I take for granted that I'm strong. I mean, that doesn't even really like cross my mind at this point. Like I just am what I am, around and to and in relation to men. And so the idea that I would be approaching it from this like simplistic anthemic, like, hey, you know what? Women are powerful. I'm like, well, yeah. Like, why is that even a conversation? Like, let's talk about how we are and let's talk about how this plays out and let's talk about our responsibility, with all of this power that we have. I mean, I don't want to just linger on this, like, hey, girls, we're finally powerful type thing. And I don't think Madonna did either. I mean, when you hear Madonna talking about, it's interesting now you've got like Sabrina Carpenter and a real interesting polarized reaction to someone like Sabrina Carpenter, which, on one hand, people are like, oh, it's clever pop music and there's more to it than it seems immediately because she actually, like, she's very sexualized, but she is taking all the power. And then you have responses. I mean, I see all this shit on Substack that's like, from people who are, from women who are, themselves like empowered and modern. They're like they're women now. We're not talking trad wives here. We're talking people who are like in the culture, and they're saying shit like, but she is just normalizing, sexualizing young girls and everything. And it's like, I hate to tell you this, but when I was 10 years old, when I was 7 years old, I had a burgeoning sexual identity and it was doing things to me. And I was developing as a result, and I was becoming the person who I would be. There is no like, we must not, like young people have their sexual identities and it goes from there. You know what I mean? So it's funny to me because it's like people who I mean, I'm sure their intentions are good, but you're modern and you're in with the culture and you want a voice for the voiceless and you want to protect people, but you don't realize how much you're basically doing the same thing that some sort of pearl clutching boomer might do to like a young person, to say like, these young people cannot handle this. And it's like, of course they can. They always could. You know what I mean? If anything, we need to be, I don't know. I don't know what we need to be doing, but I do find it silly that like, I just find it silly that there are so many discussions still about like, women should be this and women should be that, even from the people who for so long, were like, don't tell women to be anything. I don't know where we are. I don't know where I am. Where am I? I don't know.
I guess the thing for me with Luxury Skin is that it's like your persona in that music, if there is a fixed persona, like the way it comes across, is a strong character. Now, in a sense, the fact that you're a woman is sort of incidental, but I think because what you're doing in your music and in your songs a lot of the time is sort of wrestling with the nature of relationships, then it's sort of like it emphasizes the fact that you are a woman, but it doesn't come across as it being like a rallying cry for all women. It's more kind of like, it doesn't necessarily even have to be kind of sympathetic, but it's impressive.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. No, I'm glad that that is the way that it comes across. And of course, I wouldn't believe anyone who said like, oh, the fact that you're a woman like is incidental, and it didn't even cross my mind. Like, of course it is incidental. It was a coin toss, basically, how I'd turn out, gender wise. But but then there's other nuances to that. But anyway, the point is, yeah, like, of course, I position myself this way, and I am. I mean, I'm very sexed up on stage and in the lyrics, so you're going to think about it. And I'm totally okay with that. I like it.
I want to jump back, and this is really incidental, but brought up, I think you brought up videos, you at least brought up visuals. And I did want to talk to you about the videos, because I feel like I don't know when your first video was, but you've got a bunch of videos from the classical days. And one of the videos I wanted to ask you about in particular was Shovel and Bevel, which is kind of like also good, like illustration of the sort of playing around with gender expectations. But I was watching this video and I was thinking there are bits where you're with one of the bandmates, I think it is. And it's basically like you're kind of within the context of the video, like telling him that he might lose his job or he has lost his job. And there's a bit where you both start laughing. And I'm like, was that intentional, or was that just you found making the video so funny that you started laughing?
Gosh, I don't know what section you're talking about where I start laughing. Is it where I'm like over the guy's shoulders?
Yeah, you kind of start smiling and then he's smiling as well. And I was like, but this kind of seems like it's supposed to be like a telling off. But then I thought like, but that could be part of it, because it makes it almost kind of like a sex game of like, what is actually the tone of this?
So all of them were just act. The only person who was a bandmate was the drummer, who's like, we cut away to playing with the drummer. The classical at that point was a backtrack and then me singing and the drummer playing live. We didn't have anyone else at the time because it's like really into death grips. And you just need the backing track, and you just need someone bashing on the drums and someone like hollering up front. And it worked. I mean, that was a pretty cool live thing, but I did want to expand to having whatever. The other guys were just actors. That guy in that scene actually has gotten relatively successful. He had a small role in Oppenheimer. Pretty small role, couple lines. But yeah, they were all actors. So that moment, I'm like one by one firing people, and we're going for there is I'm like, hey, chum, but you're doing well. You're gonna get the bonus of a lifetime, serve him his papers. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that whole song was just sort of a casual telling off. I remember there's the reason why that is one of the best songs from the classical days is that I wrote it in like an afternoon, as opposed to everything else, which I just like couldn't stop fucking touching.
That's funny. That's totally relatable. And to draw it back to Swans, so some years ago, I was doing my usual thing when I do try and write songs, of this like painfully fragmented process of like, here are a couple of words, and now like, oh, how can I get this to fit with that? And it just like feeling excruciating. And I remember at the time listening to The Great Annihilator of Swans and some of those lyrics, and just thinking like, oh, Michael Gerard's just got such amazing lyrics. I could never manage anything so beautiful and poetic. And then I listened to him being interviewed on a podcast called The Vinyl Guide with Nate Goyer. And he was talking about how he finds writing lyrics so absolutely excruciating. And I was like, that makes me feel a bit better. Everyone's suffering.
Totally. No, I used a erstwhile bandmate of mine who was on It's All Over gave me a book. I will try to remember it. Do I have it up here? I think I have it at the studio, actually. Writing Better Lyrics. There it is. It's right there. Better Lyrics. That has such amazing techniques in it. And I think a lot of us songwriters don't want to think about like, oh, I'm not going to sit down with a technique. I'm going to, wrest these lyrics straight from my soul. But the techniques are wonderful. And I've also been reading Stephen Sondheim's autobiography, which he really just goes musical by musical, and talks about his experience writing it, both, the failures and the great successes. And his first really big break was West Side Story, which he just wrote the lyrics for. Then by the end of his career, he's, doing everything. And I personally, I like Stephen Sondheim. I really like some of his songs, but like I'm not a huge Sondheim head. But reading his autobiography is really interesting because he keeps that rhyming dictionary on him. And also, like, he says time and time again, he's like, so we got to this part of the musical where we just needed a showstopper. We needed a great song for this one character, and nobody knew what it should be about. And that is the worst position you can be in, is when you are at a point in a musical and you need a song and there's nothing specifically there's no action. There's no like getting this to the next point that it needs to convey, because it could be anything at that point. And when it could be anything, I have nothing to write about. So I found it interesting because that's the position that we're often in as rock songwriters. You're not writing for an arc of a story, even a story as abstract as like Company, with the Sondheim musical that's basically about a guy who's like single but all his friends are married. There's no plot. He's just single and his friends are married. But you need, there is something at every juncture that you're writing about. And as musicians, as rock musicians, if I may call myself that, it's like you're always just kind of writing about, you always don't know what it is. And that's why it's funny. I mean, Swans, like, in a way, all of Michael Gira's songs are about the same thing, like, kind of. And I would say my songs are all about the same thing too. And so you just kind of find different episodes through your life that all are about the same thing and are all somehow interesting.
And I think if you've got
Yeah.
kind of an understanding of what it is that's driving you, then I think that is really part of what makes songwriting compelling. It can be the same sort of theme or the same story, but if it's like really a true reflection of what's inside, then I think that
Totally.
it can be expanded in many different ways that are going to be powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, if you do decide, oh, okay, I'm writing a song about something that I saw or something that happened, then all of a sudden you've got just like the richest world to paint. And then on top of that, you've got like your sense of what it is that means something to you and what you care about. Like, you're off to the races.
I wanted to ask you about your writing practice in general, which you alluded to earlier, because I was thinking this when I was looking through some of your lyrics. Some of them look like they could naturally have come from stories that you then turned into songs. So obviously you've got the Ask Luxury blog that you do as well. What is your kind of writing practice? What's like the scope of what you do?
So I will go to my practice space in East Williamsburg and sit down, and usually I think 4 or 5 hours is maybe even like a little too much, but it's just like sit down, do a 10-minute object writing exercise to begin with. And yeah, you may be familiar with it. It's like you have an object and you write about it using all the five senses, and just free write for 10 minutes on that. Set a timer. That's a great way to sort of just, you just want to write. You want to be sure that you're writing at least something every day, because if you don't get a good song, if you don't write a song in a couple weeks, but you've written a lot of words, you can still feel okay about yourself. Whereas if you just go and sit straight down at the piano and hate yourself for 2 weeks, then, then you'll be very depressed. And then you'll have to go to the gym and you'll have to do a lot of leg pressing to get out of that. So I start with object writing for 10 minutes. And then, like I said recently, it's been all about sampling the piano. So I'll sit down at the piano, kind of go free with that, record it straight into the MPC, start sampling that. Or, I might find that there's something I heard recently that I sample. Sometimes those samples, especially when it's something that I have no right to sample, and I would be shooting myself in the foot to try to get away with having it in a song, if God forbid the song were to get famous and I were to be sued for it or something like that. So oftentimes the sample works itself out of the song, but I'll work with samples and then at that point, either from then also, I'll smoke weed in the evening and I'll suddenly just write. So something will have come up from writing, and then I'll be sitting down and making my chops and playing my piano stuff. And all of a sudden, maybe there's a phrase that I start with, and now I have the cadence of a song, and then I can kind of finish the lyrics from there. I would like to start writing more comprehensively first, like writing words more comprehensively first. Vows and Don't You Recognize both came from writing words more comprehensively first and then setting it to music. And you know, I like that. But oftentimes it happens either concurrently, or I would say it's more often it's slightly melody first, and then the words kind of find their way in. But I try to do that, I like to go in early. I like to be at the studio at 10 a.m. And then typically I'll do whatever other money work I need to do in the afternoon, evening. Or I, pop over to the other studio where I work, which is pretty nearby, and get some work done there. But when I was at a different studio, a different practice space, which was like a true punk practice space, like, on either side, and you may have read this in my uh, Substack, but I'll just repeat the story here. On either side of me, if you go at like 4 or 5 p.m. and later, there's a grindcore band on either side of you in the room. And if you're trying to play like my very hollow little like compositions, you know, you're not going to hear anything, right? So it's not a good place to go. So the idea occurred to me, if I were there at 9 a.m. and I would definitely have like 3 hours, because none of these people are in at 9 a.m. playing this music. They all work at bars or just play this music until whatever they do, and they're not coming in at 9 a.m. or they have to go to work at 9 a.m. Right. So there's going to be, I was like, no one's going to be in there. This is my theory. So I'd go in at 9 a.m. and I'd be like, I have to work. I just have to write. I just have to write as much as I can and play around as much as I can and come up with songs before anything, before the sounds start. And sure enough, they wouldn't usually start until 1 p.m., sometimes as early as noon. But that's what triggered sort of this and this started summer of 2024. I started doing this. This is what triggered me to use those morning hours to work on music and to just get right to it. Because if you it's a as my friend Tony Castrati from Crippling Alcoholism told me, it's really a lunch pail job. It's a blue collar job. You go and you work the songs. You just got to work the songs, and then the songs will come out and they will be done. But if you don't go in and work the songs, if you're walking around being like, the inspiration will find me, like, got news for you. You're not going to write that many songs.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. I wonder if that's the reason why Scott Walker had like 10 years between albums, because he was walking around the woods going, it's going to happen when it happens.
He does talk about that being the case. I've read that he says, like, I have to wait for the words, and it's painstaking. I just have to wait for the words. But, I mean, whatever he did worked for him. I think also the problem was before he had proven himself as a titan of experimental music, which came, pretty late into the game, he had already alienated or just sort of, the labels that he'd worked with were like, yeah, I don't know, Scott, you keep doing the weird shit. I don't know if we can like fund an album. So, I think I read one interview where he's like, these labels are asking me to get it up once every 10 years. Like, I'm out of practice. By the time they're asking me to do another record, like, what can I do?
Yeah, to be fair, he, as you say, he had a whole musical history behind him when he went into getting more and more
Yeah.
avant-garde. So yeah, I guess part of that was sort of a way to recreate himself.
Yeah, totally.
Talking about some of your newer music. So at the time of this interview, Bleed for Me with Counting My Money is out. And then I have heard rough versions of Die Waiting and Hope Dies Last. Are those going to be released kind of in the same mold as Bleed for Me and Counting My Money together?
Yeah, those will be released together. I had a music video for Bleed for Me, and I won't have a music video for either of those just because I'm too busy. I've got too much going on with with everything. But yeah, those two will be released. I'm hoping to get them out by the end of the month. They're going to be mastered, I think, like tomorrow. So then, assuming I can turn them around quickly, hopefully they'll be out by the end of the month and they'll be out together. Yeah.
So, without wanting to sound like a sap, so I used to, I think, have the typical kind of suppressed emotion male. Like all my emotions were just kind of like pushed down as hard as I could get. And then for one reason or another, like in the past couple of years, I've allowed things to come out. So I'm much more kind of like receptive to being like emotionally moved by things. So anyway, that's a very long-winded way of saying that you've got two songs as Luxury Skin that when I listen to, like really do kind of make me tear up. And one of them is This Time's for Love from It's All Over. And the other one is Die Waiting. When I listen to that song, like, it almost makes me cry. That is a really beautiful song.
Thank you. Thank you. So my co-producer said about it too. He's like, I could cry. I'm like, yeah, yeah. No, that one just that was a crazy, that just like I was sitting there singing through a beautiful reverb patch on a nice multi-effects pedal that had been so graciously sent to me by Eventide, and I was like just sort of reveling in the beauty of hearing my own voice.
And why not?
I was like, wow, yeah, exactly. I was like, wow, this sounds so nice, and I'm just sort of cycling through these chords, and then yeah, the song was there at the other end. I mean, yeah, and that song, so I can tell you more about it if you'd like.
Please.
So that song is about the suppressed emotional male,
Oh,
believe it or
fancy
not.
that.
Yeah. So basically, it's the story of, so it's this man as a young man, and he's waiting for something, and then as he's waiting for, and this story was based on something that my husband's mother told me about him. So his parents got divorced when he was pretty young, and he was their only child, and he said to her afterwards, you know, a year or two afterwards, he's like, Mom, when you get married, if you get married to an athletic man and you guys have a son, then I can start training him for the major leagues. And you know, and I mean that I almost cried hearing that story. You know, she didn't have another kid ever. And but you know, all he wanted was a little brother. That's all he wanted, you know. And I think it's a very lonely place to be when you're an only child of divorced parents, you know. I can only imagine. So I kind of took that. That story really struck me. And my husband did not grow up to be a particularly emotionally suppressed man, from what I can tell. But I just kind of, I took it, and I was thinking about, you know, what would happen, a little boy just waiting. He's like, I know if I wait long enough, I'll have a little brother, and then I won't be alone. And then he gets older, and he's on the train, and he sees, you know, a beautiful woman across from him, and he's like, I know if I wait long enough, you know, she'll look up and she'll see me, and then we'll be together. And it's like, oh, you can die waiting for that. So, you know, just like where that sort of closed off. Yeah, it's a simple poem.
Yeah, I guess maybe whether consciously or unconsciously, there's a certain kind of relief for me listening to that song as well, because it's like, well, thank fuck I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Oh, I love that.
And then with that, the contrast to Hope Dies Last, which has got this amazing bass line, and which also reminds me a bit of I forget exactly which song it is, something on the Boatman's Call by Nick Cave. I think it might be Lime Tree Arbor. There's something,
Yeah.
or maybe no, that's Do You Love Me? But there's another
Yeah.
bass-driven song like that yeah, it kind of reminded me of that a bit. And there's this bit in the song, like about a minute 10 in, where you have this shift and transition, which goes really beautifully as well. It took me by surprise. So I love the contrast of those two songs together.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, in a way, those songs are only being that it would not have been my first choice, I will say, to release those two songs. I would have thought like, oh, we need the barn burners, you know, we need like the songs that really knock. But those two songs were ready. those two songs we like recorded and put together, and it was like, yeah, these are pretty much done. Like there's a little detail work and they're done. And I'm just trying to get music out sort of as quickly as I can. The ones that really bang, that I think are more sort of what I would think are my first choice for the next singles, just simply weren't ready yet, and they're pretty close to ready now. But then you got to mix them and master and all this different stuff. But I think it's quite nice actually. And again, my co-producer is a guy named Arjan Miranda. He played bass on the last record on It's All Over, and he's older and he's had a whole touring career, and he's got a studio that he co-owns called Circular Ruin now, and he's just like a total badass in so many different ways. But he was like listening to those two songs and saying like, you got it, like you got to get these out. They're so pretty. Like release these. They're beautiful. And so I was like, okay, great. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll release those. So it's really nice, I will say, to have a co-producer. And this is distinct from either self-producing or having a producer. And I will tell you why. Because when you are self-producing, and especially me, like I am prone to making things way more complicated and way more experimental, and just I don't, you lose your vision. Arguably, I lack a lot of vision, or rather I have too much vision, and it carries me in these crazy directions without someone to really bounce things off of and be like, oh yeah, no, you're right, we should do this. The problem is when you get a producer, and I had a producer for It's All Over. It was an amazing experience. I learned so much. Randall Dunn, he's a genius. He's perhaps my greatest musical teacher. Well, certainly among my greatest musical teachers. But like, I'm the artist, he's the producer. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be calling way more of the shots. He's the Colonel Kurtz. You're following him into the heart of darkness, and you don't get a choice anymore what direction the boat goes. Like, so I have too many ideas to turn it over to someone else entirely anymore, but I have also perhaps too many ideas to do it all myself. So in Arjan, I have found a really wonderful collaborator, and he's very much a co-producer, and then we have someone else who mixes it, Simon Gooding, who's absolutely brilliant. I feel like I finally have the pipeline in the team, and I'm actually creating songs that maximize on the beauty, because like, Die Waiting is a simple song. Die Waiting, I think I could have eked out a version of that. It wouldn't have been as good, but if I'd done that myself, you still would have been listening to that and would have been like, that's very beautiful. Hope Dies Last, it's just like, Arjan being like, we got to get some studio assassins in here. We need a proper rhythm section in here. You know what I mean? And we get the guys who, toured with Lee Scratch Perry forever. And, anytime Wu-Tang does something live, they play those. These guys are just, I miss them, frankly. Best week of my life spent in the studio with them. Best 3 days. Let's be real. I did not pay for a week. But yeah, it's just like, because of that, we build this foundation, and now we have a truly beautiful song at the end of it. It's like, to me, that's a huge part of the process. And, it just, even 2-3 years ago would not have happened that way.
Yeah, there definitely are evolutions within that track that are very appealing. The different backing vocals that you've got, like there's this kind of like rat-a-tat-tat, sort of like quite percussive, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah.
And it all sort of like builds up in a very organic sounding way. But as I like listening to it a few times, going like, oh, hang on a minute, there's like all kinds of clever stuff going on here that I hadn't really paid attention to before. I was just sort of enjoying the song.
Right. I mean, you wanted to have all those different levels. Yeah, no, those came out great. I'm really happy, and I'm really excited for all the rest of it too. I think it's a banging album, honestly.
So
I do say so myself.
Well, I mean, the impressions that I have so far give me the sense that it's going to be good. So what are your sort of expectations now? So you say that those songs should be coming out in February or later in January?
My hope is by the end of January. It may be the first few days of February, but very soon. Very soon.
And then after that, what have you sort of got in terms of your expectations of when there'll be an album? Or are there going to be other songs coming out before the album, or it'll be the album next?
I think my thought is a couple more singles right before the record and then put out the whole album. I think by this point it'll probably be April because I do want to have vinyl ready and stuff. Yeah, I reckon it'll be April. So, yeah, and I think the album's going to be anywhere between 9 to 12 songs will make the final cut. So that's you can expect that in April, I would say. March was originally the plan. I'm going to go ahead and say April.
Okay.
We'll see what happens. I do this all myself. I do it all myself. There's no label. I mean, there's obviously people help me, Arjan, everybody else, but you know, those are at the end of the day, I am paying them. They work for me.
Yeah. Now, as alluded to in my initial email to you, I have music business topics that I want to get into with you, but I also don't want to just bombard you with questions all day when you have a life. So,
Barely.
do you have time for a couple more questions
Certainly.
of a music business nature?
Yeah, yeah. I'll do my best to field those. I've never been great with that part of it.
But I mean, you're living it, so your insights are
True,
going to be valid.
true.
So I am curious, for example, about your experience with and your feelings towards the best environments for recording and then producing music. So it sounds like you have got the experience of doing things at a very DIY level. You've also worked with more expensive producers. You've worked in studios. If you can generalize in a relatively simple way, do you sort of see there being like a pros and cons table between self-recording and studio recording?
Hmm. Well, I think that the thing that is most important is having time and space and the sort of comfortableness with the people you're working with to be able to play with things. Um, and oftentimes having people who really know what they're doing at the helm of, say, you know, who are engineering it or who are, you know, playing the instruments is what can give you that, right? So sometimes you go into the studio with a bandmate who is a capable and interesting sort of like indie musician with good taste, but they have their ego about what they do specifically. And if you try to push them out of that or tell them you want to do something a different way, or even you want to cut their part or put in a new part that they haven't practiced, you're in a tense moment. You're in like a moment where you lose that comfort and you lose that, you know. So even though you might be like, oh, I'm in my DIY home setup situation or my practice-based situation, we ostensibly have all the time in the world to get things done. That's like a tense environment where you're not really prepared and you're not in the situation to get the best performance out of someone or the best recording. If I am in the studio with Josh Werner and Gintis Janusonis, who were my rhythm section for this record, and they can play any style and they're happy to do it, and they don't have any ego in the project because they are hired to be there and play for a day. They can smash through 5 songs in a day of recording and do them each in 5 different styles. And because we can play and because I can say to someone who's engineering, who knows what they're doing, can you run it back and record them this way? Can I get more of this? Absolutely. You got it, Juliet. You know what I mean? So that's sort of what I think you need. And I think people think that like more time necessarily means more comfort and playroom and all this different stuff. And I think oftentimes it doesn't. I think when you do things at this DIY level where you're like, yeah, we'll just go to the studio and record and we'll bang it out, like you end up totally depleted by the experience and you maybe get a worse sounding product. Of course, sometimes, you know, people go in and record something DIY and it's absolutely brilliant magic. I mean, okay, so I'll tell you about one of my favorite records of all time. I think you asked me to be brief with this response, so I'm not going to be brief, but
Don't.
okay.
You've already decided you're not going to be, but it's fine. You please.
That's
You don't need
true.
to be.
Yeah, yeah. I went to thank you though. So this band Mansion, that was based in Oakland, California, you would love Mansion. Their record, Early Life, is one of the coolest records that I have ever heard. So they had, and Mansion was a band that the former lead singer of Mansion, Candice Lazarou, who has a project now called Body Double. She's brilliant. She's a genius, and I'm so glad that I ended up becoming friends with her. But she shared with me something that I don't think a lot of people necessarily know about Mansion, which was that when they played live, so they had two guitars down tuned, like ostrich tuned to one note, like down tuned completely, and then a drummer, and then Candice up front haranguing, real like talk about New York, no wave, Lydia Lunch, but you know, really like just wholly her own thing. Every time they played live, it would be slightly different tonally because the guitar movement was random and rhythmic, and it was just not random, but it was like it was based on rhythm, not on notes. So like timbrally, it would be different from show to show, and it was always so powerful. And the arrangements were so interesting. The rhythms were so interesting. The founding member, Ronnie, at the time, I forget, Ronnie Burke? I can't remember. I think that was his last name. He was like into like nu metal kind of before it came back again and was cool. And he was like, yeah, no, we're getting back into like nu metal rhythms here. And so that band like had these crazy live shows and these amazing songs, and people immediately loved it, and those shows were always lit. And then they decided that they wanted to record the songs, and the drummer said, oh, my uncle's got a studio. Was it in Nashville? I forget. My uncle's got a proper studio. He's got a nice studio. So I'll go and I'll track all the drums there. And I know that there were people involved with the band who were like, no, you're going to ruin it, man. Like, this is such a like cool DIY. Like, this is such a like grungy, punky, like fucked up project. It needs to be grungy and punky and fucked up. But like, he recorded those drums, and the fact that those drums sound as good as they do then anchors the rest of the record to be so good. And then they went in and they decided what their guitar parts would be, and then the vocals went over it, and it was perfect. So if you see what I mean here, it's like there's always pros and cons to the various ways of doing things, whether it's professional or DIY. But if you're married to one way or the other way without thinking about what gives you the most room to play at any given time or what gives you the most freedom, then you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're not going to get a good record out of it. In my limited experience.
Do you know what? It may not have been the shortest answer, but somehow it ended up feeling concise.
Good. I made a point. Great.
You definitely made a point. Similarly, on the sort of in the realms of deciding what is money well spent in terms of making music, what are your thoughts on the value of publicists and other such outsourcing?
Have a lot of thoughts on this too. Publicists, I don't think that that's good. I just don't think like a publicist to get you what? Like no one's coming to you. Believe it or not, you're the first person who's been brave enough to have me on a podcast. No one is knocking down my door for an interview here. You know what I mean? But like I think what you need to spend money on at this point, people on Instagram love discovering new music. I'm pretty sure people on TikTok do also, but I don't use it really. So I can't speak to that. But, you know, I think I pay a group of people to run little short video ads of the songs for me, and they're pretty DIY videos. They're not fancy videos that I made. A lot of found footage, a lot of asking my friends back out in California to go film birds for me, and then putting the songs over them with some lyric captions, and people love it, and people hear the music who would love it, who wouldn't really hear it otherwise, because there is so much music out there. So I think that's worth doing. I think it's very worth paying someone to get, you know, video ads of your music out there on the platforms where people are really eager to discover music. I think it seems at this point like trying to get a blog interview is, I think you should do it if you have the opportunity to, because you get to actually talk in depth about things. But like, I certainly wouldn't spend money on someone who's going to try to get me blog interviews, because, you know, like, the money's not gonna get you money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
What would you say that your roles are in terms of luxury skin? Because from talking with you, it seems like you're obviously doing more than just writing and performing songs. How would you kind of define the scope of what you're doing?
I book the tours, I book the shows, I book the personnel for recording. I mean, like I said, I'm a co-producer of the record. I would not be able to produce this record by myself in any stretch. But yeah, I mean, I have to manage the schedule of it. So I'm the producer in a few different ways. Yeah, I'm the social media manager of it. I am the video artist. I definitely like I collaborate with the last videos that were very professionally done, Vows and This Time's for Love. I worked on those with my friend Danger Charles, who's an incredible cinematographer. And we kind of co-directed them. Vows I edited myself. This Time's for Love I kind of edited, but then Danger like re-edited it along those lines the right way. But yeah, no, I mean it's my whole thing. I'll tell you one thing I don't do. I don't make flyers. Not good at that. Can't do it. When I make a flyer, it is so bad. So I hire someone to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
So between the two of us, we have mentioned how Luna Honey are kind of like our common connecting point.
Yes.
So did you play with them somewhere down the line? How did you get connected to that band?
Yeah, a few times I've played with them now. So I went through a long period of time. This was mostly 2024 when I did this world building. I love playing live. I love touring. I love it. Um, I love getting in the minivan with the men and just going. It's so much fun. So I was looking for people to play with in all the Northeast cities because it's very easy to tour the Northeast as opposed to the West Coast. Everything is so much further apart on the West Coast. But so I was looking for people in various cities, and it was bleak also because there are all of these sort of lingering ghost presences of bands and venues that no longer exist post 2020, and you'll hear the most amazing band and like they don't even exist anymore. But I somehow I remember it took me a long time because I was looking for a band that I really wanted to play with. I think it was in DC because Luna Honey used to be located there, and I finally stumbled across Luna Honey, many searches and Bandcamp tag narrowing downs. And I mean, who knows at this point how I found them, but I found their website and started listening to their music. And I'm like, this band rules. This band is amazing. So I reach out to them via email and I'm like, hey, would you guys want to play a show? Like, you guys are amazing. Because I mean, this cold calling and this searching on the internet for bands that you really resonate with, like it's not a high hit rate. I would do better to go to more shows, but I have insomnia, so I have to keep a pretty tight lid on my sleep schedule, and I don't go out very much. But I like found Luna Honey, and then the first show that they played with us was something that I think I booked. I booked it in Philly for when we were on tour. It was a wonderful show. They blew my mind. I was stoned out of my skull, just like standing in front of Ben's guitar, like, which is my favorite way to be after I've played a set. And yeah, and then I think we were all really excited to meet each other. I remember like getting out of the van and like loading out into the alley and then into the venue, and they were right in front of us. And I was like, that's Mara, that's them. And then I think Levi came up to me and he was like, hey, are you Juliet? Like, and I was like, I'm so excited to meet you. He was like, I'm so excited to meet you. So we were just like, yeah, no, we're great. We're friends. And then I booked a show for us up in New York. They booked another show for us down in Philly. And I'm so excited because they are playing with a live drummer now. I think they had their first show last night
Oh,
with the
cool.
live drummer down in Philly. So I really want to play another show with them now that they've got this new guy who has a crazy setup. He's got this whole framework with gongs and shit.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's a big deal. That's a huge deal.
Yeah, because when I first heard their music, it was the most recent album, Bound, and I thought, this is amazing. I need to hear everything else that they've done. So then I went back and listened to every single album, and I think Maura was quite surprised when I interviewed her, and I was like, yeah, I've listened to all your albums because like it was great. It just made me want to hear more. Yeah, from time to time, there are a couple of songs where you remind me of her. Like I think she has got this thing. She's again also a very versatile singer, but sometimes she has this thing that she does where it's like she's kind of summoning the spirits.
Hmm.
That's like a thing I really associate with her. And you've got a couple of songs where I feel there's that kind of energy of some sort of like communicating with the other side, or kind of like, some sort of primal energy. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's like
Yeah.
something mystical. It's cool.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. No, I mean, I love that and see that about Mara, and I'm like, yeah, I'm so down for anything that they do. She's amazing. She's incredible, and I do think, yeah, that we have that in common, in a lot of ways. Yeah, amazing band.
Cool. So from that point of view, then, in terms of shows, have you got some dates lined up? And in general, you've got the Luxury Skin website. So is that the best place for people to go for dates? I guess like on things, even though I hate them, but I guess on Spotify, you've got dates
Oh
and
yeah.
Bandcamp as well, I guess maybe.
I never put stuff like that up on Spotify. I probably should. There's so much to manage. Probably the best place would just be Instagram, I think, to keep up with this type of shit. But I think also the website I will resuscitate. We haven't played live since last February, which is really sad. My drummer abruptly had to move away in March. So I was like, I guess I'm just gonna focus on making the record. But the good news is we have a new drummer and he is amazing. And we have not announced this show yet, but actually, by the time this podcast comes out, we will have announced it. We're going to be playing on March 27th at the Wood Shop in New York with Crippling Alcoholism, who I mentioned earlier, who are like one of my favorite new bands. And yeah, so that show I'm super excited for.
Crippling Alcoholism are really cool, and they came to Glasgow where I live, and I didn't
Yeah.
get the chance to see them. But that being a connecting point, there's a band, a sort of a gothic cabaret folk duo called Charming Disaster, who I interviewed a little while ago. They're based in Brooklyn, I think, and they came to do a little mini UK tour recently, and I got to meet them in person.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'm not saying this just out of selfish interests, but are there any thoughts on coming and playing shows in the more European end of the world?
It would be my dream and my pleasure. I would love to do that. Can you book me one?
I mean, I can certainly talk to people who know people.
We'll link after this. No, I would love to do it. I mean, honestly, I would. It would be my dream for the next 5 years to do like a lot of touring. I've got a beautiful pit bull and husband, and I don't want to be away from them for like 9 months out of the year or anything. But like,
Yeah,
no, I would love to come play in the UK. I would love to come play in Europe. I mean, yeah, I would love to play as much as possible.
nice. Well, Julia, I'm going to let you go, but it's been a great pleasure to talk to you. I'm quite surprised that no one else has asked you to be on a podcast, but there we go. That's my
You
good.
were the first.
Nice.
You popped
Uh,
Luxury Skins podcast cherry.
nice.
He's blushing. Okay.
How delightful. Yeah, just a little bit. But yes, I hope we will talk again. And I will, in fact, email you because I have thoughts and suggestions about other possible things that we have talked about and haven't talked about. So,
Yes, please, Tom. This was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me. It was wonderful to talk to you. I've been following your work for a bit. And yeah, I hope we will be in touch many a time.
Little dream you're not allowed. You do without so patiently. If he were here, you'd bring him out and teach him about the major leagues. The children play and ain't it sweet? They tumble down then on their feet. Die waiting, die waiting, die waiting, die waiting. See her breathing up and down. You think you found your golden fleece, or should you